right. So here we are, literally right after the NIGP Leadership Summit 2026. Another amazing experience. Last year I thought couldn't be topped, and this year was just even greater. How much fun that we got to bring Ed and Jeff. Oh, we're like a bookend here. Ed and Jeff, joined Trish and May and I this year, and so it was very cool, to have the full team here. So I'd love to recap. Let's just do a couple of highlights, and then I'd love to know the three of you that did workshops. Would love to hear some of the feedback. What resonated with people at the workshops. But let's start big picture. Highlights. Trish, you just got off stage, a great keynote on self care. So what were some of the highlights this year for you?
What I loved is that we started off with leadership lessons and we ended with the leadership lessons. I thought that was a fantastic bookend for us. And quite honestly, the activities were fun. They were engaging. They were silly. People had a great time. And then we were able to wrap it up with talking about the leadership concepts. And so I think that we used every opportunity to help this amazing group get as much out of every, even fun moment. Yeah, it was full.
So for me, trust and influence, we started off with ethical frameworks and then led into trust, and that traverses or crosses over every industry. And so I expressed that, and everyone resonated with that, and we had deep, rich discussions around trust issues. And so that was a huge highlight. And from there, we got into practical situations because I've lived that, and so I was able to help facilitate their experiences and how to look at them and then how to approach them. So the practical aspect was key there. That was my main highlight. And then afterwards, I had a lot of people come to me and continue to ask me about practical situations and the frameworks that we looked at and the principles we looked at, how that applies to real life. And so a third highlight would be my background as well as here. They're more in the management aspect, more dotting your I's, crossing your T's, in the weeds. And so I took it to the global perspective. And that's what I really enjoyed, is bringing their perspectives into that global realm.
The NIGP membership, they're brilliant minds, and the expertise is so deep and wide, right? And it's so much fun to invite them to come up to 40,000 foot level, because they don't get to do that day in and day out on a regular basis. And, some of the big picture ideas was really fun. I know trust resonates with everybody. Our study indicated that trust was like the biggest issue for city managers, county administrators, even more so than budgetary constraints. That they found trust was a greater issue. What, if anything, did you hear back from feedback you think resonated the most with the participants in your workshop?
Great question. I think the one aspect that I would say that emerged most from trust was their senior leaders. So in the statistics, it showed that there was less trust with immediate managers, but with this group, it showed that their higher senior leaders, they had mistrust in. And that was discussed often. And a lot of times they can't do anything about it because they're elected. However, I gave them advice and guidance on how to attack it internally and do what you can do and worry about your sphere of control only, and worry about your group and connect with your group to try to cope with that environment.
I think one of the biggest challenge, and we've all worked in local gov, so we know this, is that the elected officials change every couple of years, right? Because they're staggered terms. And so I always giggled when people would say, oh, government, they're not used to change. hello, right? There's change in leadership every 2 years. And so that's a challenge. And we know that trust takes time to build. And so then when you get this change in senior leadership every 2 years, you hardly have enough time to build that trust again. So that, yeah, that can be a real challenge. How about you, May? What were some of the highlights and feedback that you got?
In my workshop, we talked about the three types of trust. And the first type of trust is self trust. So, what I was hearing was, why do you have lack of self trust? And a lot of it had to do with their confidence level. How do they feel about their skills? Maybe also being questioned a lot in their role in procurement. They feel like they're challenged and questioned a lot. So I think with being in a session where they're learning how to develop those leadership skills, and they even talked about the differences, the management skills versus the leadership skills. That came up yesterday in a conversation. So I was glad that we had the opportunity to address those skills that are going to make them better, make them more confident, help us build their trust level. And no matter how long someone's been in leadership, I found with the folks in the class, they were always looking for something that they could add to their bucket or their basket of goodies. I did an assessment initially when I started the workshop, and I said, how many of you have been managers for less than 5 years? Raise your hand. And the numbers varied according to the three workshops that I had. In my last workshop, I had more experienced people, somewhere between the 10 to 15 years or whatever. But they were also hungry for information. And I think talking about emotional intelligence and the importance of that and how it's going to get you promoted, and also in looking at the business cases for emotional intelligence, I think that really resonated with them because there were a lot of, I didn't realize that. So the emotional intelligence part of them developing their leadership skills, I think it's really important.
If I could just add to that, because I popped into your workshop at one point where you were having this discussion, and I loved that you said that skills get you hired and emotional intelligence gets you promoted.
So true. Yeah.
Yeah,
that's
I thought
great.
that was really a great insight.
Absolutely. And we talked about those resumes that they looked at and they hired this person at this super resume. And then I said, and when they came to work for you, how many of them succeeded? Did you have some that did not match that resume? And so what's wrong there? So IQ, yes, IQ is important, and it's great to have people around you that are intelligent, but they also have to produce. And so EQ gets us to know who we are, how do we relate to other people, and we can produce better. We build those great relationships, but we also can produce better. And I think for these procurement people, because they have to build relationships, I think the EQ model really resonated.
As far as the activities were meaningful. So the collaboration quest, the scavenger hunt around the property, the networking events. It's always wonderful watching people learn when they don't realize it's happening.
Right.
When it's experiential.
It's so much fun.
Right.
Everyone was
Yeah.
laughing and
Yeah. They were so busy having fun, they didn't realize they were gaining new insights and new paradigms and learning how to apply them. That was really cool. But in my workshop, which was on resilient leadership, what really I think stood out for them was what we kept coming back to choice. It's your choice. So we started off talking about how you may not have a choice in the events that occur to you, but how you respond is 100% your choice. And so we had a long conversation about how the military never reacts, it responds. And what's the difference between reacting and responding? But I think the highlight in my workshop for most of the participants was about the stress and how the body performs under stress. And so there are certain things, the heart races, the blood vessel can, depending on your choice, if you see that this stressor is dangerous, your blood vessels are going to actually constrict, which can create that coronary event. However, if you choose to look at the stressor as a challenge, your blood vessels actually don't constrict, they widen, very similar to what happens when someone's experiencing joy. So what was wild for many of the participants is that the body prepares you to handle the stress. It's our interpretation, our reaction to it, what that really determines, is this a negative event or is it a positive event? But and one of the last things that really stood out for me was there was an ex-military person in one of my workshops, and one of the hormones that is excreted under stress, it's called the cuddle hormone. It's oxytocin, and it's called the love hormone. And what it does, it causes us to seek social interactions. And so this military gentleman said, retired military, well, I've never been into hugging. So just then, someone across the room gets up, walks over to him, says, "I'm going to give you a hug." So here they are in the middle of the classroom hugging. But
And I saw it. I witnessed that, and I jumped up so fast to take a picture, but it's all blurry because they hugged so fast and then
but and the cool part that came after that, well, the cool part after that was he came up to me afterwards. He goes, "You know what? I actually felt something."
Oh, wow.
So he actually felt like, wow.
Gosh.
So it was kind of cool to see it actually in action. Where he,
So this was your first experience with the NIGP
Yes.
membership and the leaders that came to Tucson. We all have a bias because we got to experience them last year. What were your impressions of these amazing people?
a couple. Obviously, they're very detail oriented, focused on the minutia, which they have to, right?
Yeah.
But it's also really fascinating to see how they gravitated to. They had a hunger for the traditional soft kind of skills, right?
Yeah.
So how do we make a difference? How do I help my teams? And it was great in the workshops listening to so many of these young leaders of how they're reaching out to their teams, and how they're trying to engage and interact with them and help them be successful. And they were just hungry. Give me some more tools. Give me more tools. And one conversation that we really had that I think resonated with them was, you come to an event like this and you get exposed to a lot of paradigms and a lot of models and a lot of resources that either is refreshing your memory about them or it's new. But what really is important is to recognize is that none of this is a silver bullet. That it's about identifying how can you make this real for yourself. You have to be authentic. So if you learn it as you're learning how to approach things from a different perspective, that it's really about needing to find a way to make it real for yourself, and giving yourself the grace to realize that it's going to take a while to make it something for yourself. And they embraced that. They were hungry for it. So it was great to see that their hearts and their minds were open to something. Considering that they're probably very much in the weeds most of the time.
Yeah. Procurement, as well as the other departments that we work with, it's certainly been, I'm going to say my experience, but our experience collectively, because I know we've talked about this frequently, is that I love the way local government employees show up with their minds, their brilliant minds, and their hearts, because that mind-heart connection is so powerful for engagement, for creativity and innovation, for commitment, right? Because their why is so much bigger than their paychecks, right?
Absolutely.
It's a calling. That's their
Absolutely.
purpose.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's and it's absolutely how they show up. What were your insights from this time? You got to start us off with the desert and the seasons and how the seasons show up, like leadership lessons, which was beautiful. And I heard about it every day, that how much people loved that. What was different about this summit?
Yeah, boy. Well, of course, being in Arizona and right at the base of the Santa Catalina Mountains, I mean,
Gorgeous.
it's gorgeous. And so for me, and I think for many others, it's when you're surrounded by beauty, it changes your demeanor, right? When you're surrounded by sunshine and beauty, and then the excitement of learning, because of course we're all learning junkies here, and just being surrounded by especially this time of year, the stillness of the desert. I think the vibe was very different for me, right?
Agreed,
Than
yeah.
than compared to last year in a colder climate, a more urban, environment, which was equally fun.
Very good,
Yeah. I think, talking about the keynote, I heard from, members, the participants every day, and I love the openness in their sharing, right? You experienced that right after you got off stage as well. And you guys experienced that with your workshops, that, the members of NIGP just kept sharing so openly. And what I had one particular exchange with one of the participants here who talked about one of the seasons, made reference to one of the seasons, which was bloom. So if you remember, I equated bloom to celebration. Like, this is really our time to celebrate and acknowledge our team members and the great work that we've done. And it's a great time to begin innovations because you start to see traction happening when we're in bloom, right? And that's just such a fun time. And this member, and I think I shared this with you, Trish, this member said, I had a real insight, and I had a conversation with my husband last night about this concept, because he's made a comment to me a couple of times, why are you always looking for the negative in the relationship, or something along those lines? And she said, it occurred to me, we're in bloom and I'm not celebrating that because I'm looking for the next drought.
Wow.
And that just really had an impact on me. And I've been teaching and speaking about leadership for years, many, many years.
Some may say decades.
Some might say decades.
Years could add up to decades.
Yes, they do. Yes, they have. And for a very long time, I've had people say to me, especially in those longer engagements where you're going back, that, oh my gosh, I tried that strategy, with my spouse, or gosh, that technique really worked with my teenager. And I've always said, leadership lessons, leadership skill sets, leadership awareness is life skills. It's life strategies. It's life lessons. It's nothing that's just confined to the workplace. So I think for me, it was that reinforcement. I mean, I know that, I hold that belief, right? To hear it reflected back is really powerful. It's like a B12 shot, right? For energizing.
I have a question
Yeah.
for all of you. What are we going back with? What makes us feel good about what we do, really different personally?
This is what I would say is that I love that after I'm with a group of leaders, that they're bold enough, because I don't think it's easy. They're bold enough to be vulnerable and share what just spoke to them, what just touched them. Trish, I cried. When you cried, I cried. That vulnerability in leadership is typically seen, I think, big, broader world. No one should see you sweat, right? Don't let them see you cry. And what I love about this group, and I think just so many leaders that we have the pleasure and honor of working with, that they're willing to be vulnerable and connect in a way that is peeling the layer back, and that is, I think, where change can actually happen. And so I love that. I love the vulnerability, and that they will share right even on the spot.
Segueing from what Trish said, I would say that they thought about things that they had never thought about before. That was what resonated with me, is that I never thought about that. And I have this. So I learned from them as well. I always learn. I've learned just a little bit from us talking the last 15, 20 minutes. And so I love that I can always learn from them. They think about things they haven't thought of ever. They discuss it with the class. It resonates with the class. And a lot of times I had to shut or stop the discussions, these rich discussions, because we had to get out on time. Right. And so I was learning from them as well, but they were thinking about and talking about things they had never even thought about.
So again, segueing, I loved that, and this is energizing me, is that there were so many Arizonans here that said, I will never look at the desert the same way
Oh,
again.
true. That is so true.
Absolutely.
So I
true.
loved that. That energized me for sure. Yeah.
Absolutely. Even though I'm still afraid of my barrel cactus. But I would definitely, I know. One of the things that became very vulnerable, I think it was in the second session that I did on the first day. And we were talking about mental health and talking about leaders creating a culture where you have to realize you're dealing with humans. So show grace and the humanness. And I shared with them about working in 2 organizations that just was wonderful and helped me in a difficult time. And I was sharing with them Dr. Church's commitment to love-based leadership and that she leads the way that she's written her book. So I shared my personal story, which all of you guys know. And after I shared it, of course, I'm thinking, gosh, you shouldn't have talked to those people about that.
TMI, is that what you were thinking?
Yeah.
No.
But it just, you know, you always want to share a story that ties into what you're talking about. So it tied into what we're talking about. Well, after the session, that's when you get people come up.
Yep. Yeah.
And this young leader, this gentleman, he probably was in his maybe early 30s. He came up to me and he said, I just want to let you know that my daughter is going through her last treatment for leukemia. And I said, how old is your daughter? And he said, she's 4.
Oh my goodness. Oh my gosh.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
All of a sudden,
Kind of takes your breath away.
and my story was to me wasn't even important anymore because I can't even imagine this person who's also managing a department and is having to deal with a young child that is ill. So that was really
How
tough.
lovely for you to create that kind of atmosphere.
Yeah.
Where he could come up
Come
and
and
be
say,
that
yeah,
vulnerable with
yeah,
you.
oh, yeah.
Just thank you for
Yeah,
doing
no,
that.
it was great. So what about you, Ed?
I don't think it compares at all to what you just shared. But what,
It's not a contest.
it was during the workshops where we were talking about the cuddle hormone and that how it's okay to ask for help. Well, that's something that I have always struggled with. In fact, I have a coffee cup that says "Fix It Man," because I always
It says what?
Fix It Man.
Fix it.
Fix It Man. So throughout my life, someone comes to me with something, I want to just fix it. Just fix it. But that's not what people really need, right? So sometimes they come to you and they just want to vent. Sometimes they just need to just to know that you see them and they're being seen. And so we had a significant conversation around there, and it refreshed my memory that this is something that I'm still a work in progress on. I tend to. I have a tendency to lean towards myself, and that's not the way humans were created to be in community, and that's something I continue to work on. So it was interesting to see how light bulbs were going off for some of the participants, but mostly for myself as well.
Yeah. I love that.
That is
It's
great.
such a human thing for all of us. That's, I think, just a human thing that I find myself I want to fix it too. But it's a good reminder. Sometimes you just need to cry, and I will cry with you. I'm happy to cry with you.
Well, he didn't go that far.
I'm just saying, as the crier in the group, I'm happy to cry with you.
You're always ready to cry.
I'm ready. I'll laugh with you too.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, I think as we wrap this up, I just want to give you all the opportunity. Was there anything else, any other insights that you wanted to add?
I can't remember who I'm segueing from, but it was either Ed or May, but authenticity and integrity. That's the one thing that resonated with a lot of people. And I believe from research and from experience that every leader needs to have integrity, your moral compass. If you don't have that, you're not in this role for the right reason. So that's the one thing that resonated, and it resonated with almost everybody. Secondly, what May said in terms of EI, emotional intelligence, that is key in life. And 85 to 95% of all successful people have higher levels of emotional intelligence. And that is key across life, like you said. So those are the 2 things that additionally resonated with me.
I think it's great when you work with a bunch of talented people and we can put ideas on paper. And then all of a sudden, through months of planning, we see it come to fruition. And what a great feeling. It's like having a baby.
It's like having
A baby without the labor pains, without the labor pains, I guess. What a great feeling it was. And I cannot get out of my head when I saw a group running down the hallway, holding their flag, trying to find their next location.
It was great.
I thought I would die. And I'm thinking to myself, it's working. It's working.
Yeah.
And then when Ed and I were wrapping up the morning session, one of the leaders came over and they were looking at the pictures. And the leader said to me, she said, I think what set this meeting apart from other meetings I attended is the collaboration quest, because we got to know each other better. We had fun.
Got silly.
We got silly. We went outside. So it was like, oh, that's great. Because and she said, I don't know how you guys put that together. I was like, don't ask. Don't ask. Don't ask.
Yeah, when you said without the labor pains, I'm thinking, oh, that's not true. Yeah, there were a little bit of labor pains, but it was joyful pains for sure.
Yeah, we're blessed.
We're always blessed, yeah. Well, I'll tell you, this would not have been as successful, certainly in my opinion, without each and every one of you. I am the luckiest person on earth to have the team that I do. And please know how much I appreciate you. I love you. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Oh,
all right. So with that, let's go see our family.
that's
Let's
it.
go see
All right.
family.
Thank
Looking
you.
forward.